This week's topic is about never giving up, never quitting practicing, but also having room for discomfort, being dissatisfied with your art, and kind of like the weird arty things where you're just like bleh, half the time, right? I'm going to be discussing this while working on a storyboard plan, practicing drawing hands, and then making a semi-vent piece of art about a sleeping medication I was prescribed to help with my chronic fatigue syndrome. I know it sounds counterintuitive. I'll explain it later. But it's not graphic or gory. It was like about the dizziness symptoms, but I will be giving you a verbal and a visual reminder when that pops up and when that will end, just in case you're not in the mood. So, with that being said, hi, hey, hello. If you're new here, my name is Rain. If you're not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you stopping on by to my little corner of the internet. And we're going to have fun today. I had a wild week, including a job interview gone wrong, being roasted, then being uplifted by Reddit, and then basically being a zombie for over 24 hours because I don't take sleeping medication well, apparently. So let's get chatting. I have stuff to talk about. Let's be clear, the job interview gone wrong was not because the person interviewing me was bad or in the wrong or not great. Like, it is entirely on me, but it provided me a lot of insightful comments that I can reflect on to improve. So, like, no, I did not get the job. Obviously, it wouldn't be an interview gone wrong if I did. However, I think that this is a very indicative experience of being an artist and the form of self-critique to become a better artist, basically. And so, gone wrong for me, but in the end, this experience, this first interview in the art world I've ever gotten, is really invaluable, and I want to talk about it. So I'm not going to share the name of the company I applied for because I actually really do want to work with them one day. I genuinely want to work with this company. I would not have cold emailed them asking if they offered internships if I didn't want to work for them and support their mission. And so I don't want any negative attention to exist for them because I really do love their work and I would love to support it and contribute their work and their video games one day, right? And so I'm not going to mention who they are because I would love to work for them. And they gave me an opportunity to resubmit my portfolio once I develop more of these skills that I was critiqued for lacking in my portfolio. So basically, to summarize the primary critique is that they do like my art, but it's a little bit too painterly, a little bit too developed in a weird way. So let's explain. When they say my work is too developed, it is not very simple and generic enough to show that I can be easily molded to a variety of game styles, right? Now, I talk later in this video because past me did do a live voiceover for the last half, but I talk about it a little bit how I have a hard time recognizing my own art style as a consistent thing. To me, my art style is an ever-evolving thing that just happens as it goes. One day, all of my characters are going to have very thin eyes with, like, no curve to them, like a flat top, really low-hanging under eyes with really, really big gap between their lashes and their brow. And then other days they're going to have, like, no gap. Their eyes are massive, like falling off their head, not Vampire Night style, okay? We do not touch Vampire Night, okay? That is almost criminal. But I always feel like my art style is not honed, but I think that's just kind of part of being an artist with a developed style, maybe? I've never heard another artist talk about it this way, but I feel like once you've developed your art style is an extension of you, who you are. That's why I don't believe in finding your art style truly, right? You can try and you can work on curating the things that you love to create, love in a art style, but you're going to inevitably find that you're going to just gravitate towards doing certain things. And once you found your art style, it is probably becoming second nature. And that's why I talk about when I'm in an art slump or I feel like my art's just bad. Usually that means that an art style change or a development in the way I do art is probably on the horizon because it's just not feeling natural anymore. And usually I just kind of draw until I figure out what I'm looking for. And usually it's something minute, but that minute thing is just something that I now need to do to just flow with my art again, which maybe isn't the experience for others, but it's just kind of how it happens for me. It just comes naturally. My art style came naturally. I didn't go looking for an art style. I didn't copy other artists until I found something that I liked. But I did look at other artists and say, I really like the way they draw eyes, and then try replicating the way they draw eyes until it either felt natural or I decided, I hate this. I hate drawing like this. And I studied other artists until I kind of inevitably morphed into what I am today, right? And I still do style studies personally in my free time to see how other artists render things, to test the way they like proportion out the face, you know? I think it's very important to privately style study artists you admire and respect, or if you do post or share your style studies, crediting them and discussing that this is a style study. You are simply trying to learn, right? Not taking their style and crediting yourself for it entirely. Like, this is a practice exercise for me. And I believe the art community should always share where you get your inspiration from, because what's better than tagging an artist you love and then sometimes they like your post back, or they say thank you, or they talk to you about it, and it's a great feeling. And it might not happen for the first several times you do it, or if you're a very beginner artist, it might take a while. If your artist is super big, like lowish, right, like maybe they don't get to those types of things anymore. However, I find it to be a really like magical experience to express your admiration and love for an artist. But this is really getting off topic from my point. Basically, I'm not video gamey enough was the words they utilized, which is okay, because now I know, right? I didn't know that before. Effectively, my style is so well developed and I have technical skills that not having other art styles in my portfolio makes me look like I'm incapable of being moldable or switching up on a style to fit the actual job I'm being hired for, which is usually not good in video games and animation, right? You need to be able to emulate the art style, okay? Hayao Miyazaki, it doesn't matter, I can't pronounce anything. Studio Ghibli is a team, a massive team of artists making these shows, you know? Homeboy is not just drawing every single individual panel for his entire animations himself, by himself, alone, with no artist help, right? There's a team of artists who have mastered the Ghibli style, and they are working together to create this film, right? These are all people who were able to adapt to the job that they wanted, right? And I need to be able to do that, or at least develop a style that is a little bit more indicative of being flexible or achievable by other artists that I would be working with, right? I can't have my weird painterly style that is entirely brain vomit for me and expect other people to want to work with me or to be able to work with me. Now, this does not at all mean that I have to throw away my art style, okay? I talk about it a little bit more later, but this doesn't mean that my art style is bad, right? It doesn't mean that my art style is not good. It doesn't mean my art's not good. It means that I have to demonstrate in my portfolio that I am capable of being more flexible. I have to put more of these quote-unquote generic skills into my portfolio if I want to be looked at as a real candidate for a job. Now, this is my first job interview in the art world at all. So I really went in having zero idea what I needed and just kind of like hoping that I did something right. And I clearly did, because when I got emailed back, I have not been emailed back by anyone else. And I've been cold emailing for a while. Cold emailing to say, do you offer internships? I would love to work with you guys. Is there any way I can get involved in your projects? Do you have a place I could sign up? Sometimes I just registered for talent pools, all of that stuff, right? And that's why I utilize my website for my portfolio, because that means the link is ever kind of like functional and I can just add to my portfolio. I'm in the talent pool. they can check my portfolio whenever they want, and if they see the updated version, they see it, or if they checked it 4 months ago, they saw something completely different. But it is ever evolving enough that they can return to me and see that I am developing my skills, right? And that's why I use my website. However, long story short, it went bad in the sense that I didn't get a job, but it went great in the sense that I had an invaluable conversation where somebody took the time out of their day to critique my portfolio and tell me what I needed to do to be more desirable for the industry I want to work in. And these really are highly important and wonderful experiences. Maybe it really hurts in the moment. You're like, wow, I just got rejected. It didn't hurt me. I really didn't even expect to get the job. I have been applying for art jobs pretty much religiously for months now. A lot of them are internships where I'm not even going to hear back for even more months, right? But needless to say, I wasn't expecting to get the job, but every interview is an interview closer to getting the job that I want, right? Every interview gives me more experience and more practice articulating myself in a way that gives me the opportunity to get my foot in the door one day, right? And so really, this was a remarkable experience. And then I posted on Reddit, okay? I did have a mini mental health crisis because I was like, oh my God, homeboy literally said my art is great but awful at the same time. And I posted on Reddit asking for more critique on the matter and other recommendations because I also don't believe in like only taking one person's word for advice, right? Yes, I was taking all of it into account and I was going to check all the boxes they provided because they were all very, for me, logical things I needed to do to have a good portfolio and get the job, right? However, furthermore, additionally, all of that nonsense, I do like to get second opinions and have more diverse arrays of like thought processes going in, different perspectives. So I went to Reddit, and when I say that the Artist Lounge Reddit is one of the nicest places on the internet I've ever been, I mean, I did not encounter a single slur, a single person saying your art sucks, give up, quit, kid, because you're going to get that no matter how good you are, right? Like not everybody is going to like your art, and somebody's going to be a dick on the internet, right? So it was a really respectful conversation I had with a lot of people. I have a couple more people to reply to at this moment, but they all gave me really, really good advice on steps I can take to improve. And I think that's what we really need to do as artists is put any pride or ego we have aside and seek critique so that we can get better a lot of the time. But I also don't agree in unsolicited critique, critiquing people when they don't want it, because I think that some people just aren't ready or in the mood to have critique at that time, right? I always welcome constructive criticism to my work. If people have an opinion that they want to share about my art, I like to hear it. I like to know other people's perspectives. I might argue with you if your point is like completely missing my point. Like, I had somebody tell me, like, why do you draw naked people? Like, it is literally disgusting and a sin. And I responded, they were clearly, it was religious, right? It was a very religious comment. And they were like, drawing nudity is wrong. And I responded and said, all of our great works of Adam and Eve, they're fully nude. That nudity back when Adam and Eve were around was simply a state of being. You know, Adam and Eve didn't have clothes, right? I don't know a whole lot about religion. I'm not personally religious. However, I do know enough about religious art because that's something I value. I like learning about all the art histories. And I said, it isn't conductive of your opinion to support nudity in art and nudity as a concept only in specific situations that benefit you. And they deleted their comment. And I felt a little bit bad about that because I really was trying to have a real conversation. But they did not like my opinion, clearly. However, things like that, if you're like drawing naked people is wrong, I'm going to be like, well, being naked is kind of important to this point plot, right? Bog Bodies was the post it was on, right? And so Bog Bodies is about a nymph, a creature of the bog who lures people to their death, basically a siren, to feed the bog, basically, and to continue the nutrient cycle for the environment to maintain prosperity in nature. So it's kind of supposed to be like equally a repenting of humanity for the destruction of natural environments, and us also kind of just going through the natural decomposition cycle if we were to, perish in the middle of nowhere. Additionally, and to be clear, when it comes to perishing in the middle of nowhere, that also is kind of like if we didn't have preservatives for corpses. This is getting morbid. I'm sorry. I didn't put up a verbal warning. I'm talking about dead people for another 2 seconds. Basically. But basically, if we didn't have preservatives to keep our corpses around, we would go through this natural cycle and we would be reconsumed by the earth, taken in, and we would continue through the life cycle. Energy and matter is neither created nor destroyed. It simply becomes a new form, right? That kind of philosophy. So does it make sense for the siren bog creature who literally sleeps in the bog to have clothes? Absolutely not. She doesn't care or value human society or human norms. And we wear clothes because of our own morals. I know it feels weird to say, but it is our morality and our societal standards that brought us to the point of wearing clothes for the sake of looking dressed, right? Clothes were originally for warmth and for protection and stuff, yes, but now clothing being a moral standpoint is completely separated from why we started wearing clothing in the first place. It is that modesty, right? And so, does it make sense for some weird bog nymph who literally doesn't encounter any people and is a literal creature of nature to wear clothes? No, it doesn't. And so, narratively speaking, giving her clothes would look wrong and off, and it would distract from the actual point because you'd be sitting there like, why is this woman soaking in a bog fully dressed? And give the bog lady a swimsuit? Why? That makes even less sense. So, if you say something and that opinion doesn't work with the narrative, I'm going to respectfully argue with you. But also, if you're telling me that nudity is wrong under my post when almost all of my characters are hot, powerful plant women and zombies, I feel like you're probably in the wrong corner of the internet. Most of my characters are undead, sentient plant people. No, they don't have clothes. They don't know what clothes are. They don't understand. They literally are mushrooms, and they don't wear clothes. So that's enough of that weird tangent. I want to get into my storyboard for this week because I want to talk about medical art as a documentation method for chronically ill people, because that is something I do. And this week, I had a moment with my sleeping medication. So my comic starts with these characters kind of first meeting Trumpet and Peach. I'm really thinking about calling Trumpet of Death just Death, so probably Death and Peach. It starts with Death and Peach meeting, encountering each other for the very first time, and Death being the first show of kindness to her as an upper class citizen from a lower class citizen that isn't about some sort of financial gain or some sort of obligation out of fear for repercussions from the royal family for disrespect, right? Simply an act of kindness that is dismissed and moved on upon, Death helps her up and walks away without care for her position within the royal court as the daughter of the king. And that is what sparks the desire to learn more and gives her an opportunity to actually learn about the lower class that she is not permitted to interact with outside of maids, basically, which are basically the middle class, not the lower class, right? And so in this world where mushrooms have consumed large portions of human DNA and intermingled with us to continue our survival after a post-apocalyptic environment in which humans who did not take in the mushrooms properly or were not able to host the mushrooms died. They didn't make it, and the disease killed them, basically petrifying them and stuck in an eternity without life, right? The human species as it exists, as we know it right now in real life, is over, and we are now amalgamated with mushrooms for our continued survival. So we are human in philosophy, a lot of our morals, our desires, our drive, our goals, the way we want to live, but we have distinctive qualities that are innately mushroom and not human in the slightest, like perhaps a much, much stronger desire towards decomposing natural matter, a desire to not have like structured buildings for the most part. Mushrooms flourish in the rain. Well, to be technical, if you see a mushroom, it rained, right? Like, that's the fruiting body. Mushrooms don't exist outside of the ground unless they are ready to reproduce. They exist as their kind of mycorrhizal underground parts until usually extreme moisture. They pop up. They're like, ooh, have my spores, universe, wee, and then they just die again. This is why I couldn't have been a botany teacher, even though I really wanted to before getting my art degree. I would have been useless. They go, wee, yay. None of the scientific terms that I had to learn for any of my degree stuck, clearly, obviously. But anyway, so they do their thing. And so there are aspects of us as mushroom people that are like, I want to go live in this moist, damp Irish castle hobbit hole and sleep in a dirt bed and consume decomposing matter and deteriorate the fall leaves. You know, weird. Like if somebody came up to you and said that that's what they're doing for their like next September, like that's their September, October plans, you'd be like, are you okay? When you say that, you mean you're like putting compost on your vegetable garden, right? What do you mean a dirt bed? We can't condone the no-nos here on the internet. Please don't, right? Like, you're like, who are you? Are you okay? Should I call the police, a psychiatrist? Do you need a mental health professional, right? But in Mushroom Land, it makes sense. Mushroom people, yeah, it totally checks out. It's totally clear, right? And basically, I want this first scene to be the moment that Peach is confronted with just how many lives are lost, but still treated better than the lower class, right? As you step upon the hands of fallen humans reaching towards salvation, do you realize that even these dead, no longer existing entities have a better fate than the lower class people who didn't make it to the top after the apocalypse, right? They were not able to take reins on the public narrative and mold a future for themselves the way the kings did, and then subsequently the upper court system, right? The regency, effectively. It is then that you realize that as you walk upon statues of what could have happened to you, your ancestors, not that long ago, and that there are people who are still suffering a fate worse than that, does Peach realize that she has to fight harder for this equality that she dreams of, that it can't be a pipe dream anymore. This is something you need to take action upon now. Even if that means betraying your own family, you have to do what is right and adhere to your morals, and that you can't let corruption continue to fester. And I want that to be the main point of the first comic. I've discussed that these two fall in love and that they find solace in each other and purpose as individuals because they make each other better. They are fundamentally two opposites who fuel each other's desires to become better people as independents and as a couple. But I want my first few comics to be exploring the relationship that develops when two people realize they have a shared dream and desire, and they become and work towards becoming an unstoppable force that will not permit injustice any longer. And I want to be able to give Peach a lot of room to go through the process of thinking through what she wants to do and what she realizes she probably has to do for there to be the success of equity, right? And that is simply what I want the key moment to be. The moment where Peach starts to step across the bridge to the lower end of the city, which is just these decrepit, failed evolutions, effectively. I want that to be the primary scene. The revelation of how severe the injustice actually is to be the key moment. And that's what this scene is supposed to be about. While it does require a lot of dialogue and explaining from me to get there, when it exists as a sole panel, I think the other panels will put it into context enough that it's generally going to make a lot of sense. I am still torn on if I really want them to talk at all. Sometimes I wonder if the best way to approach it is for them to never speak, and for it to exist as standalone pieces of art that communicate a story just like that, by simply being illustrations you look at and consume the context of. But that's something difficult that I need to approach and figure out as I go, right? And so I'm not sure, but it's in planning and storyboarding out these ideas that I'm able to figure out really if words need to be said at all to communicate my points, which is what I'm working on. I really want it to be show more than tell. So that's basically what I've been trying to process in the last few pages of my sketchbook. I'm not entirely sure how long it'll take me to write my first mini comic, if I want to color it or anything like that, how many pages it'll be. I know it'll be however many pages I need to finish the narrative and communicate what I want, but I just don't know how long that will take. Planning a comic is a lot harder than I originally anticipated. I have a mini script, but it's mostly just a description of the images that I think are most important. So let's talk about the rest of the things I got up to this week and all of my lovely shenanigans. It probably seems pretty poorly timed that I decide to start talking about this at this point in this video. However, I do actually have a reason for going a little bit over, and that's that the sketching process is kind of irrelevant to what I kind of describe as my medical art. And additionally to that, I also feel like I didn't have anything to say about the initial color choices. When I say it's kind of like a venti medical art, the way that I kind of articulate this process is I usually have a hard time remembering things and remembering experiences. One aspect of fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome is brain fog and memory impairment to an extent. I don't have memory loss per se, but it is very rare that I accurately completely remember an experience and can then articulate the actual feelings in those moments. I will remember what people said, but I won't remember necessarily how I felt, if I felt positive or negative about it. And usually that's why I give myself a long time to settle down in feelings before I actually confront somebody. If we maybe had an argument, was my argument actually angry? Was it actually a formal discussion? I won't know the next day, right? It takes me a while to sift through my feelings and how things actually kind of happened, right? The memory is just not good effectively. So long story short, when I start a new medication, which this is about trazodone, which is just a sleeping medication, I try to make a piece of art when I start experiencing symptoms that goes with the flow of how I'm actively feeling, so that I can look back at it and kind of try and discern my thought processes. The colors, everything just is what it is, right? I don't think. My goal is to articulate the feelings that I'm having so that I can then effectively tell my medical professionals with better language and kind of a better understanding, hi, hey, hello, I did not settle well on this medication, or I'm experiencing these symptoms currently. Should I continue taking it? How long does this usually take to get beyond these symptoms? I'm on OCD medication, right? And those OCD medications are for my chronic pain, but they're also for my depression. And so, with a lot of medication that you might take prescribed, please do not do drugs. Basically, there is a period where you will probably experience negative symptoms while your body gets accustomed to this medication that is altering probably the way you think a little bit, not directly, but by making you feel better, right? And so when you have something like depression, your medication might boost your serotonin. And so it might take a while for the serotonin to start jiving with you completely. But also, when you've been depressed for so long, having that like boost of serotonin is probably going to feel really different internally, right? Like, we're sensitive entities, and like doing something new and different can have a lot of like uncomfortable effects at first, like nausea. Nausea is like my number one side effect every time I'm nauseous frequently, right? My migraines make me nauseous all the time. But like, geez, I really do not need a side effect that makes me nauseous on top of nauseous on top of the nausea, right? So it's really frustrating. However, because it's a sleeping medication, this is like a particularly important process for me because I'm going to conk out, right? Like, I'm going to be dead to the world for the next who knows how many hours sleeping. And so I'm probably already not super, like, with it because I'm super drowsy right now, right? And I was drowsy, okay? Like, I was falling asleep at my desk. So, I'm drowsy, and so I'm already not really taking in the information and the feelings I'm experiencing super well, right? And so when I say this is vent art, I'm in no way like trying to get out a negative feeling per se. I'm simply trying to document this experience so that I can then talk to my doctor and say, hey, this is like how this night went. And I try to do it every night, although I usually only do one big one, and then I'll do like sticky note doodles to articulate if I'm still feeling this way, right? And this is to help me be a better advocate for myself, right? When you have a disability, especially a disability that was very controversial for like a decade or more, for a really long time, people would say that my condition was fake. It was an umbrella term, that it's not real. It's just like a cop-out. My condition has been imaged. Like, it's been imaged happening, right? And we know exactly, not exactly per se, but we know what is occurring in the brain to make the pain happen, the chronic pain, right? We know that this is an overactivity of neural firing, and it is basically my brain and my nervous system overactively sending out pain signals even when I'm not actually experiencing a physical issue, and it is causing constant chronic pain throughout my entire body. It is basically a issue with your nervous system's functioning, which is why for a long time my doctors were testing me for neuropathy. Because the nerves are overfiring, there's a lot of neuropathy symptoms that happen with these types of conditions, right? And I've been diagnosed with Lyme's disease, Borrelia babesia. I have been tested for Marcons, which I'm not even sure is real. Mycoplasma pneumonia. Found out I'm allergic to mold. Yay me, I live in a house with black mold. Living my best life over here. I've been tested for lupus. That other thing that's not Lyme's disease or lupus that sucks. Really, I've been tested for a lot of conditions, and I have been medicated for conditions that I never even tested positive for. My medical history is incredibly negative. I was raised by somebody who didn't believe in Western medicine, and so I went to naturopathic doctors from the ages of about 11 to 17, right? I turned 17 in 2020. Is that what happened? 5 plus... Yeah, I turned 17 in 2020. And so obviously the world fell apart and I couldn't really go to most of my doctors. And so that is literally what saved my life in a sense. I was being medically mistreated and abused by naturopathic doctors for about 6 years straight. I found out after leaving it, because I became an adult and I was able to advocate for myself, I found out that I was being prescribed and treated for something that I never tested positive for. Not even once did I test positive for Lyme's disease. However, I was on antibiotics for 3 years straight with a gut issue that makes me incapable of properly absorbing nutrients. So, I have a very sensitive gut. I can't absorb nutrients. And so I am tanking my biotics. Like, my probiotics are being murdered. For 3 years straight, without me being capable of reabsorbing probiotic medications fast enough to effectively not suffer. And so, on top of an already existing chronic illness that was not being diagnosed, I then subsequently tanked my immune system to the point that I had a falsified immune deficiency, which then supports the theory of Lyme's disease and lupus, because they are autoimmune disorders, right? And so I was pushed through antibiotics to a falsified immune deficiency that had me literally not producing white blood cells anywhere near the quantity I was supposed to. And do you know what her response to me not having it was? To formulate a weird-ass tincture in the fucking back room of the doctor's office that they worked in that has no label and no indication of what is inside of it. I opened it, and it smelled exactly like horse feed. I don't know if this makes sense to people who don't have horses, but you know the smell when you open up somebody's musty tack room that hasn't been aired out all winter? Yeah, it smelled exactly like that. And she was like, oh yeah, this is for your white blood cells. No ingredients. I have allergies, by the way, that she found out I had. And then she prescribed me stuff that had those allergies in it multiple times. Did you know drugs have eggs in it? Like... That's kind of irrelevant. But long story short, I don't trust this woman, okay? I think she was trying to kill me. On top of the antibiotics, the malaria medication I was on for some reason, don't know why. I don't have malaria. I've never had malaria. A homeopathic sleeping medication that made me forget my name, fall over, forget how old I was, forget where I was. I woke up in a delirious state, and then my mom dropped me off at college while not capable of identifying myself and left me there. So that was cool. I was concurrently enrolled, for the record, so I was taking college starting at the age of 14 until I graduated high school, and 14 because I skipped 6th grade. Not because I'm smart, because I went to a school that had horrible education, so I was comparatively smart, okay? To be clear, I skipped 6th grade. I was not smart enough. If I was in a public school, I probably would have been held back. That's how bad I was at a lot of my subjects. I didn't learn how to do math until college. I passed algebra entirely by watching Khan Academy. Like, I didn't understand a single word. They were like, divide. I'm like, what does that mean? Who? I'm in algebra. And they're saying these words that make no sense to me. This lesson's on factoring. Okay, Google it on Khan Academy. Watch the video, follow the steps, and hope. So that's how I passed algebra. I didn't actually learn how to do math and, like, take in the information until I went to college algebra when I was 15, okay? So I literally could barely multiply. And I never learned half my times tables. So that's cool. I also never learned the states and capitals. I also lit my geography book on fire and never told anybody. So I can't read maps either. Don't do that, please, for the love of God. You will never, like, it is so embarrassing to be looking at Google Maps and be like, so wait, like, how big's a block again? Don't do it, okay? Don't do it. Past me messed up. No, Past Me did not mess up, okay? That book made no sense to me. My education just probably should have told it to me instead of giving me a workbook and sending me home with it and saying, good luck, kid. The instructions sucked. I did not get it. I think I still don't understand the book. I tutored somebody, and they asked me a question, and I was like, I'm sorry, kid, you have to ask your teacher. I'm your math tutor. Which, by the way, I'm a math tutor now, despite me not learning how to do math until I was about 15. You know, you can conquer and succeed, but holy wow, my education was garbage. Like, literally the worst. I was a very, very uneducated child, but I went to a school where everybody was uneducated because the teachers weren't good and they literally did not care. Okay, so that's cool. It's amazing that I ended up in the sciences with how bad my education. I guess we never had arts. Like, we didn't have any art. So maybe that's how I ended up in science. Like, science was the best of the bad subjects. It was really bad. Story time, I guess. My teacher, it was split into 3 grades per class. So my 3-5 teacher left. Bless her soul. She was the best teacher in that entire school. Everything went downhill from there. And the preschool teacher moved up to teaching 3-5. And we had to go in every day and correct the spelling on the board because she couldn't spell science and stuff like that. Which is bad if you have uneducated 7th and 8th graders, because I skipped 6th grade and I was the only kid in 6th grade. Like, that's how tiny the school was. Like, my grade ended up empty after I moved up. Like, there was no one left for it. So, yeah, we'd have to go in and fix the spelling because she didn't know how to spell. And then parents started doing it as well. So the education there really, truly is horrible. I feel genuinely awful for any kid who is having that as their education. I believe that all kids deserve better and a good education, and that is truly awful. And it hurts my soul. But the school has very few students left in it, because for the most part, people around here just aren't having kids. And therefore there are no kids to like go to the school. There's still enough to keep the school open. I think there's some 20 something kids between preschool and 8th grade, which apparently is enough if you live super rural, but it is truly an unfortunate fate for these children. They deserve so much better. Yeah, there were also some CPS calls on some of the teachers, so you know, it was a time. It was like my middle school, elementary. I didn't find out that there's a difference between middle school and elementary until I like started interacting with people when I left to go to high school. Or I guess I went to 8th grade at my high school. So the school I work for is K-12. So I moved out in 8th grade, but that math teacher was somehow worse than the other. Not worse than the original school, but she did yell at the very, very clearly disabled kid to stop because she was the only one who didn't know they had a disability, but they were very open and honest about their disability, and it was a super obvious. It was weird. It was awful. And then I mentally checked out because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die here. They're going to yell at me. And I'm very sensitive. If you yell at me, I'm going to curl up on the floor and cry like a child. So I'm very sensitive, right? And I'm really off topic now, but effectively, this is how I learned to communicate with doctors and kind of have a better grasp on myself, especially working with a naturopathic for so long. No matter what I said, it really didn't matter because she completely ignored, and I had multiple naturopathics. One of them literally gave up on me. She was like, I literally can't help you. And gave me to someone else in her office. Sometimes I wonder if it was just because she didn't like me because I didn't get along with her at all. So when I was younger, I was very like flippant with my caffeine consumption. Like I only really drank caffeine when I was going to school. I would drink a coffee in the morning. I would go to school. I'd conk out. And on the weekends, I wouldn't really drink any caffeine. I like green tea. I really do. This was before I found out that I'm allergic to Earl Grey. I don't know what in Earl Grey I'm allergic to be clear, but it gives me the most intense abdominal pain and extreme nausea. I have to literally go lay down and die for a while after it. So, unfortunate, because I really do love the taste, but that's irrelevant. I would like drink an Earl Grey over the weekend, you know. A tea here and there. And then during the summer, I had nothing to do, so I literally wouldn't drink any caffeine. But she was pretty convinced that my caffeine was what was causing me like 90% of my pain. Even when I cold turkeyed it for 3 months straight, it was always, your caffeine's was killing you. Then she put me on a paleo diet. Then she put me on that one diet that starts with a K, keto. And then like a couple other diets that didn't make sense to me. Paleo, pescatarian. It never made sense to me. She put me on a homeopathic medication a couple of times. All of them really messed me up. Long story short, I had a really bad medical experience up until I was able to advocate for myself. And this was one of the methods I learned to, one, approach the feelings of isolation by having a doctor that genuinely did not care about me, or if she did, she was so stuck in her own ideas of what medicine is that I was not being treated, right? She diagnosed me with things that I never had, I never got tested for. I went in and I had retrieved my physical file from them, and they quite literally had diagnoses on there she never told me she gave me. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's at one point, and she never even told me what it was. I don't know if you're medicated for Hashimoto's. I've never talked to a professional about it because it was very obviously not what I have. And I had that diagnosis, among other diagnoses, one of which was like diabetes, but I'm not diabetic at all. Like, at all. Like, at all. So I have no idea where it came from. It was a really negative experience. And so this is a method for communication for me that helps create solace, but helps me also advocate for myself. Because when you work with a doctor and you're raised by a parent who doesn't prioritize your health over the morals of naturopathy versus Western medicine, which I believe there is room, and I support holistic medicine mixed with Western medicine to support what you need. If all holistic works for you, that is amazing, and I'm happy for you. All holistic doesn't work for my condition, for me. If you are living life fine, if you're able to smoke weed and like get through the day, that is great. I'm happy for you. However, I need to be on medications that stops my nerve pain and ceases my OCD, because my OCD is incredibly graphic and self-violent, and the consumptive, overwhelming thoughts telling me to engage in these dangerous behaviors are things that I need to have not happen. I can't function and live with these overwhelming thoughts. I am somebody who requires medication to live and be a functioning person in society, right? I require it to sleep even, okay? I know it sounds weird, but I wasn't able to sleep when my home was empty until I started medication because of how extreme my paranoid delusions were. And they're graphic, and I don't really think it's appropriate to talk about it without a lot of pre-warning conversations, which we don't have time for today. But I do want to make art about it. I actually kind of want to make a video game about it because my reoccurring nightmares are kind of interesting, and my stepbrother actually had one really similar to them, which I think is kind of fun. Not in like a fun way, but like I think that a game exploring that experience can be an interesting form of catharsis, and I think people would actually enjoy it if they weren't like experiencing it as a nightmare every night as a child. But long story short, I'm was put on trazodone for my chronic fatigue, which sounds counterintuitive, but with chronic fatigue, getting the proper amount of sleep, staying asleep, and not waking up in the middle of the night is incredibly important to trying to maintain some level of awakeness during the day. It's not that I can't sleep, right? It's that I can't stay asleep and I have a hard time falling asleep, and thus I don't get the full 8 hours I need, and therefore I'm not able to stay awake during the day. And I have to take frequent naps. So this medication is supposed to help me fall asleep and stay asleep. Like, that's the goal, so that I can exist during the day without medication or excessive quantities of caffeine, right? Is to, like, because I shouldn't be on excessive quantities of caffeine, right? It's not good for your nervous system. I know I'm never going to stop, but like we can agree when we have a bad habit here, right? And I wouldn't say it made me drowsy, but it made me drowsy. The way to describe being on trazodone for the first few days with words would be that I felt like I was floating in the liminal space between awakeness and sleep. I wasn't quite in either realm, and I felt like I was puppeteering my own body through existence. I had to go to work like this. It sucked. Awful week. I've had an awful week. It was really hard. Like, people's voices felt like they were echoing underwater, and everything was just vertigoed to hell. I've had a very rough week, and this was my first day on the medication where I was experiencing these symptoms. And I'm actually meeting with my medical professional in a couple of minutes after I stop this voiceover to discuss if this was the correct path for me, if I should keep going, if the kind of duration of these kind of bad symptoms initially is good. I have spring break next week from my my paid job, and so I should be able to go through the process of acclimating appropriately and safely over the next week and have these symptoms, and maybe trazodone will be the sleeping medication that helps me get enough sleep that I no longer have to take naps every 3 hours. But that is something that I need to explore and figure out with my medical professional. And this is something that I'm going to utilize to help articulate those feelings, right? I honestly didn't remember this piece like super well the next morning. I knew I did it, but I didn't really remember how I approached it until the next day. So I wanted to explain my kind of silly approach to finishing up the last page of my sketchbook real time, because I thought it would help me articulate my thoughts, but now that I'm here it probably won't, but that's irrelevant. I have a huge issue that I'm sure future me will talk about a lot in the start of this video that you've heard up until this point, where I'm really bad at finishing a sketchbook mentally. Like, I have 11 finished sketchbooks front to back. Yes, I have done them all in succession of each other. There's no in-betweens that I didn't finish, right? Like, I'm able to do it. I can't move on to a new sketchbook until I finish one, unless it's like a specialist sketchbook isn't the right word, but like I have this, if I can move my keyboard out of the way, I have this Canon Bristol board that I use for larger marker projects. I'm sure you, if you've been here a while, you recognize a lot of these whips that I really need to scan. I haven't decided if I'm going to do them digitally or not, still. And this paper started acting up on me, but that's irrelevant. I have a toned sketchbook off over there somewhere. No actual idea where it is right now. And like, I don't want to fill an entire toned sketchbook and work exclusively on toned paper yet. I kind of want to fill one front to back one day, but I'm not, like, it's not what I'm feeling or driving with right now. So those sketchbooks I will like have as I go. They're for a finished project. They're not a sketchbook. They're very different to me. Something like this that's a nicer quality paper to this isn't something that I just kind of want to put my dorky little goofy pen sketches on, or like a couple videos ago, maybe even last video, I did these dorky meme cats as in crayon drawings. These tabs are for my finished sketchbook tour that I'll be doing next week or the week after, depending on how eager I am to jump into my new sketchbook. These are the pages I want to do full scans of with my scanner, just to preserve and like put up somewhere, you know, just to like document their existence as like just enjoyable, cute little sketchbook pages, right? And so ultimately, they do have a purpose. I'm not sure if they'll still be in when I film my sketchbook tour. It really depends on how excited I get to start my new sketchbook, but all of this is kind of irrelevant. I'm like really bad at finishing a sketchbook in the sense that I just feel like I'm losing my drive every time I get to those last couple pages. Like, I'm losing sense of myself, and I start to feel repetitive in my existence, which sounds really deep and philosophical, but basically it's like I feel like I'm not original anymore once I get to the end of a sketchbook, and I feel like I've been reutilizing all the same things for a while. And I don't know why that happens. I can literally not draw basically any of the same thing in a sketchbook and still feel unoriginal and inauthentic when I get to these last couple pages. So I usually treat the last 5 pages of a sketchbook as like literally a dumpster fire. Burn it. Useless. We hate everything here, right? And I just do anything that I would usually do on a sticky note or a scratch piece of paper, kind of just in the sketchbook directly, like this. Like these studies, I might just do it on this paper, even though I usually like to do them on this toned paper instead, right? And I've been feeling weird stylistically. I will definitely talk about it in the first half of this video. I'm current real life me before voiceover me right now. So I know I'm going to talk about it, and basically I'm sure I explained it as I had a job interview that like basically said that my art is too distinctive. Obviously not my weird art like that, but my art like bog bodies, I assume, is one of the first pieces they saw on my website. Where is it? There it is. My pieces like bog bodies are too distinctive, stylized, and painterly to be successful in the game industry, right? That was how it was explained to me. I do believe that there is room for people who have art styles like me, just that I don't have the work experience to make those connections and therefore have those positions. And the summary was that I needed to effectively become a little bit less distinctive in my portfolio and develop a portfolio where I have a more basic or like accessible art style. And I'm not opposed to that, right? I love my art style. My art style is the natural way I draw. This is something that comes completely at ease for me. Like, I don't think when I create my art, when I'm drawing like bog bodies, right? It just is me. However, I understand that for my personal work like this, even though I do want to make a comic, a short one about bog bodies as well one day, or at least make a set of illustrations that tell the narrative of bog bodies, I am aware that my art might not be desirable to a lot of people or even a majority of people, and that having a more simple and easily accessible style can be beneficial for getting a job in the art industry, at the very least showing a diversification in my portfolio that displays that I'm capable of drawing something other than what I do. Even though for me, I almost always feel like my art style isn't real. It's weird to say, but I feel like I don't recognize my own art style as a style. Every time I draw, I feel like this piece is a little bit different than the last piece, and it causes a bit of a like discomfort and a bit of an identity issue in itself when I'm creating, right? And I think it's simply that I don't think, and so things feel a little bit different every time because I feel a little bit different, but that's irrelevant, right? So I was already prior to this job interview thinking about developing a comics style, something to make drawing my comics, where is it? Something to make drawing my comics a little bit easier, a little bit more fluid and fast. Am I able to navigate my own sketchbook? Seriously, do I need a table of contents to understand my own self? Am I confused? Where did this page come from? But I was exploring styles. I really like this one, that just probably glared out because it's a photo blue. But basically, something a little bit more cutesy, a little bit more soft, and a little bit more direct, I guess would be the way of saying it. Like, this wouldn't be rendered in my usual style. Can I find something other than bog bodies? Yes, but do I want to? It wouldn't be rendered like this. It would be rendered a little bit less chaotically and with a little bit more intention, right? Nothing too drastic, but something that I hope, I really can't even like tell my own art apart sometimes. Like, sketches like these come really natural to me as well. It's just like, will the sketch that I like turn into a finished piece is more so the issue. Like this sketch could have turned into a finished piece at any point. Does this look exactly like bog bodies? I don't think so. Can you tell it's me making both pieces? Maybe. I genuinely do not know what it is. Like, my style confuses me half the time. And maybe that's just an issue with my own self-worth as an artist, which also is irrelevant to this conversation at this exact moment. I think it's definitely a little bit more reserved for the sketchbook tour. But I do want to eventually have another style I can work in that's faster, and a little bit more like desirable to other people. Now art styles like this one, I can't think of anybody who has it off the top of my head, but a much rounder face, oversized eyeball. I draw oversized eyeballs anyway. But like with a mouth really squished to the chin, which I also do. But I think what is distinctive about like this face organization from my normal art is I usually have the nose and the eyes a lot closer together and the mouth higher up with a small chin. So the face isn't very long. I draw really squished faces, and the eyes would be a lot smaller. You know, they'd probably be like right here. And they'd be much more lidded, right? Because I like people to look like they've been sleep deprived for multiple decades, right? It's squishier. The ears are big circles. They're fun shapes. There's no distinctiveness, although I do really like showing the inner ear, so maybe... I just did circle eyebrows. I love circle eyebrows. Chunky, funky hairstyles. We're loving it. Thin neck. Proportionally, it's dorky, right? But it's dorky in a charming and cute way. I really like this. I don't know what it is about this one. It makes me think of Kim Possible. I don't have words for this. It's giving Kim Possible energy. The lips are still very low to the chin, but it's no longer tucked up into the nose super close like it is here, because like the lips aren't drawn on. But the lips would probably look like that. I might just do a smile though, you know? Who knows? We'll figure it out. That's the beauty of a sketchbook. You don't have to be confident in anything. It's a place to explore. I hate this art style. Not like visually, like people who draw like this, I love it with these facial proportions. For me, hate working in it. I don't know how I do it. It always gives berry and cream energy every single time. I'm a little lad. Who, what, when, where, and why? I don't know, but it's every time. Also with these styles, the forehead is pretty close to the eyebrows. Unlike this one, the forehead is pretty big comparatively. I really like this. I like a bit more of a... Van Gogh is not the right way to articulate it, but basically a bit more of a like chicken scratchy with intention vibe, right? Like, I know where I'm placing my lines when I'm doing this. I know what outcome I want from these lines. I'm being very intentional in making it look scratchy and not super well-defined, if that makes sense. Like, could I have done the exact same thing? Oops, no, I can't. I'm really bad at drawing curved lines. Like, I could have done this like this. It's generally the same thing, right? It's the same-ish eye shape, same-ish eyebrow shape, but I like this a lot more. It has a more artistic quality to the line art that I very much personally love. So I do like this. I do like drawing like this as well. It doesn't come as naturally to me because I'm not really good at doing hatchy face shapes. I like a confident face. And the ears are a lot bigger. That was just because I like to draw big ears, but I never really let myself draw big ears, right? I usually try to keep my ears like a little bit more like this style, right? Where my ear does end at the nose and like mid eyeball if it's a super big eye. I usually try to keep it short. This one I really wanted to just have the long ear that goes above the eyeball. I'm really into it when I see other people do it, so I figured it doesn't hurt. I like this one. This one is like a star for me. Same as this one. And Kim Possible kind of jives. I messed up her mouth though. Like, that's why there's an X here. The mouth was not talking to me, and I slipped and made my hand too thick, which is why I actually redid this sketch. Oh, I glued her down pretty good last night. Okay, there you could kind of see where it went wrong. I had a really bad hand twitch, and her eyeliner ended up way too oversized, and I just didn't like it, right? Which is fine, right? It's fine to not like what you did. Oh my gosh, can I get this open? There we It's fine to not like what you did. And I knew what my mistake was, so I didn't feel too bad covering it up. Like, if it was like I authentically thought I was doing the right thing and then I realized I messed up later and it was bad, I probably wouldn't have covered it. But because I, like, as soon as my hand kind of, like, twitched out of place and my line got super thick and I realized, like, going over it was just gonna mess up the delicacy. But, like, this just with the big eyeliner with the rest of the sketch wasn't working the way I did the hair. I do the eyes first usually and then the hair. So it was just not working. So I just did it on a sticky note and covered it. But I didn't cover other mistakes I made. This entire face is completely wrong to what I was trying to do. And this is completely wrong to what I was trying to do. In every way physically possible. Like, the chin didn't work out. It was supposed to be up here. The lips, a little bit lower, more far apart. The chin was actually probably supposed to be a little bit more curved, right? Because Jinx's chin is curved. Did I say that these are all sketches of stylizing Jinx specifically? I hope I said that. I probably didn't at this rate. Future me has to be responsible. Eyebrows were messed up. Like, if you draw the skull under the sketch, this is just making this even uglier. If you draw the skull under the sketch, though, like, it's just not quite lining up. Like, the eye needed to be a little bit further back for where the lips are located, you know? So if the eye was more, like, right here, and then we had this kind of nose cavity, my orange cat is about to fall and be stupid! Woo! If you heard that, it was natural orange cat behaviors. I almost need to look at a reference for the skull. Holy wowza, I've not done this in a hot minute. And I always have references. So, the nose cavity should have been a little bit lower, so the nose a little bit more right here. The eye should have been back here. Wow, you can actually almost see how much better that is already. And then the lips probably should have been set back a little bit more in the face as well. And then the forehead comes out. I don't know if you could tell super well, especially with the way my lamp is, but this is actually a lot better if you just, like, ignore where the front of the face used to be, right? If you hatch in these spaces and you kind of try to redefine the face like that. Oh, and now my dog is upset too. How fun. The eyebrow should also travel with the eye itself. And then I like to add the other lashes on the other side, which I just totally spaced doing. I did this late at night while, on the trazodone I was making this vent piece about. Yay, sleeping medication. It did not speak to me. Wow. Or it did, and it did not speak English. But I'm sure future me will talk about that while working on this. So, either way, I really like this sketchy style. It's not sketchy, but it's like, it's sketchy. You know what I mean? I really like this, and, you know, Kim Possible has a place in my heart. As for this one, not so much. It just doesn't speak to me, even though I did it wrong, and it was probably... I wasn't looking at styles. I was just thinking about minor things I could change in my art that would maybe be more desirable, right? So a little bit more of a chibi approach, a little bit more of a cartoony approach, a bit more of a... realistic isn't the right word, but elegant? I don't know. The only way I know how to describe lines that go kind of like that and define things based almost entirely on this kind of almost hatched method is Van Gogh-y. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't... Berries and cream is always a no. No berries. I kind of liked this one too. I did cover it with a sticky note, but basically it was mostly to do like smaller eyeballs. Like, that was the goal, because I do draw eyes generally a little bit bigger. I like this doodle. I only doodled it because I had crayons on my desk. If I didn't, it wouldn't be there. I don't know what this was about. It just happened. But That's the beauty of the sketchbook. And once again, I really don't feel like myself when I'm coming to the end of a sketchbook like this. And so doing something low pressure as exploring different art styles and figuring out how I can maintain some of my qualities, circle cheeks, circles everywhere, while also maybe becoming and developing a little bit more of an art style that's appropriate for putting in my portfolio for other types of jobs is something I need to consider. I never considered it before, but after the job interview, I realized that I have to be flexible and prepared to learn everything I can and be as diversified in my skill set to be desirable. And while the critique was largely that I'm too distinctive with my art style, I think that that benefits me a lot going into this new phase of my existence, because I learned anatomy and then broke it for my own art style, right? I learned what I needed. I can do a really good figure drawing. I can't draw realism. That's the only thing I never figured out. But I learned the rules before I broke them, and I developed my own style by simply pursuing what made me passionate and pursuing what made me feel fulfilled and happy as an artist. So now I know that I won't lose myself and the art that I love to make, and even some of the other, like, less refined styles, like my more playful cranny style. I know I won't lose this while trying to develop a secondary style that will make me good for hiring as a storyboard artist or a character designer, right? I won't lose this because I found my identity and am fulfilled in my artistic identity. And I know who I am as an artist. And I know my messaging and I know my values. So if I decide to do all of my professional work for a storyboard, as a storyboard artist in this style, I'm never going to lose this, right? I am confident enough in that I will not forget what I love to make by doing my storyboards in this style. And I create a lot of art, digitally and traditionally. So I also know that I'm always going to still have art like this ongoing in my life if I get hired to design characters in this style, more so, right? I simply need to find the one that fits for me as a secondary style and something that I can repeatedly do, right? And so I chose Jinx because I love Jinx, and because the one time I did try to draw her, Jesus, the sketchbook is dying. One time I tried to draw her, I was in a bit of an art slump and I wasn't feeling super good. So, oh gosh, navigating my sketchbook is like navigating purgatory. I wasn't feeling super good. I like the sketch, yes. But I want to do Jinx better justice when I'm feeling better anyway. And so I'm kind of also doing what I need to do good fan art, which is the weird process for me. But to do good fan art, I really need to draw a character some like 15 to 20 times before I'm like comfortable with their face enough to actually illustrate them. It's a weird process, but I can't just like draw fan art first try and have it not look awful. It takes me a while to navigate a character and figure out like what makes them them, what makes them identifiable as them across various art styles, and then how do I manipulate the things in my art style that I really care about and that give and take, especially because Jinx is all X's and I have a very circular might not be the right word. This is like, with how awful I am at navigating my own sketchbook, this might as well have been the sketchbook tour. But I have a lot of circles and I like to have a lot of soft curving edges in my art. I do have these kind of like breakup lines that I do simply for the sake of it. Like, it just makes me feel more defined. This is unfinished and never going to get finished. Please pretend this doesn't exist. But there's a lot of like little circles in my art all over the place here and there. And I like to have a bit of a dotty kind of element, you know? I like to be loose and playful. I do have soft hatching and scribble qualities. Like, I just scribbled that in. I didn't think about it. But for the most part, I have a lot of circles, and I need to give and take with that and kind of figure out how to navigate stylizing the X's and the more harsh aspects of her character design in a way that fits right, because I'm not satisfied first try. I'm not satisfied until I've drawn a character in my style enough times that I can draw them confidently every time without really having a reference. Like, they need to be second nature for me to be proud of the fan art I made, right? So I need to work on that with Jinx anyway. So exploring different styles and just kind of like having fun with her hair, her different hairstyles throughout the series. It was an enjoyable way to end a sketchbook that I have probably been ready to be done with since this page. Oh, jeez. Like, I started slipping away and not wanting to be in the sketchbook anymore probably around the time I finished this. Like, I'm done at this point. This is like too close to the finish line for me to want to do anymore. So I'm ready to be gone. I'm ready to be done with this. I'm not leaving, I promise. I'm gonna be here forever-ish, maybe. Don't bite me in 10 years if I retire from YouTube and fall off the internet and become a hermit in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, the sketchbook is over. So let's kind of bleed into outro me. You know what? I can be outro me. Past me can be outro me because future me hasn't happened yet. So if you liked this video, like it. Dislike if you dislike, subscribe if you would like to see more of my content, share with anybody who you think would find my unhinged ramblings interesting, and furthermore, thank you so much for watching all the way through to the end of this video. I love talking with you guys in the comments, so comment down below if you have anything you want to say, any thoughts on any of the topics that I brought up and discussed throughout this video, and yeah, I'll see you Saturday at 9. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, wherever you are, and with all of this being said, bye-bye!